Welcome to Gail's Kitchen. Today we're going to make fried okra and fried okra pickles. This is not your mama's fried okra. I call this okra not your mama's okra because this is not the way my mama fried it and it's not the way I was taught to fry it. But I'm using a beer batter today and I'm frying the pieces whole just like you would of pickled okra, and actually have fried some pickled okra, and these are just delicious. Serve them up with any of your favorite sauces. Make a Cajun dip, make a blue cheese dip. This pickled okra is just so good. So the first thing we're going to do is make our beer batter because we want to let this sit for about an hour. And you're going to need 2 cups of flour, all-purpose flour. To this, we're going to add a little bit of cracked pepper. You can do that to taste. 1 teaspoon of salt. 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. Half a teaspoon of cayenne. And you can add more or less to taste or omit it. When you make a batter for frying, it doesn't have to be an exact recipe. And I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of some smoked paprika. I like the color that it adds. So let's toss our flour and spices together. I love frying okra. It's one of my favorite things. And I'm also going to show you how to fry okra pickles. I've put up many pints of okra this year. I put up okra with dill. I put up okra with mustard seed. I put up okra with a combination. In most of my jars of okra, I add a little pepper. I like to make mine hot and spicy. This jar has dill and it has a cherry pepper. This jar of okra, I've actually added a small tomato and I've added a cayenne pepper. So rewarding to be able to grow some vegetables and put them up and make your favorite things like pickled okra and fried okra. Okay, so for the batter, add 1 beer. But we are going to let this sit for an hour. And as this sits, the yeast in the beer is going to cause some rise with our flour. So it's kind of a thick, pasty look right now. So let's just put this aside and let it sit. So let's head out to the garden and see how much okra we have left. It's the end of my garden season and I just want to fry up one last batch of okra. So there's a few okra left at the top. This okra has grown a lot taller and it's easy to see. The plants are starting to die off, but they were great producers. It's amazing what you can get off of just, a few plants. I had 55 plants and I planted them in only about 6 foot by 16 foot square space, maybe 100 square feet. And I have been able to put up a lot of okra. I've eaten okra. You really don't need a lot of space to be able to produce a lot. There's the perfect size for pickling. I always say that the okra hides behind the leaves because every other day I find one that has grown and gotten a little bit old. Okra is a plant that is actually in the mallow family, and it's an hibiscus, and it creates these beautiful, beautiful blossoms. And the okra likes to hide itself. That's a beautiful pod. You see a pumpkin back in there. So we were able to find a little bit, a couple handfuls of okra. And it is the end of the season, so it's, just waning on its production. This is the perfect size to fry. At the end of the season, the okra starts to get a little curve sometimes and grows kind of funny. But these are perfect to fry. This size is what I normally use for pickling. Sometimes you will find a couple pieces that have gotten older. They get a little tough. You can tell the texture when you slice through it. This one is still good. So what we need to do is rinse these and then clean them up, and I usually cut this end of the pod. You don't want to cut into the pod itself. You want to cut as close to the pod from the stalk as possible. But if you slice into the pod, it will release some of that slime that's in the okra. So you want to trim them like that. So we have our okra nice and washed. I'm just going to dredge these pieces in flour. And the piece like this small, I'm going to dredge the entire thing in flour. Now growing up, we always slice the okra in rings. But I find that's a bit tedious. I kind of like fried okra as a finger food. But we will fry different sizes. Now this piece is too large to fry whole. The only ones I'm going to fry whole are kind of small. So these I'm going to actually slice them in half. And you hear that kind of crunchy. It's getting to the end of its days. When it makes that kind of crunchy noise when you slice it, part of that's because the nights are cooler and it just doesn't grow the same at the end of the season. So we're going to take those and cut them in half and dredge them in a little flour. So you can cut these however you like, but I just want to show you the different options. So we have varying sizes here, and I'm going to let that sit. So these are some pickled okras that I did last year. Drained them. And it doesn't really matter what size we have. This is a little bit big, but that's just fine. I'm not going to slice it in half. It will fry just fine whole. But the texture of your pickled okra is obviously a little different than a fresh okra. So these are a little softer. That's a little tiny one. When I make pickled okra, I like to fill the jars completely. So even though I like to use the longer pieces for pickling, I will come back and use some of these smaller pieces just to pack the jar. I may do, because I have a pickled habanero. May fry that too. What the heck? Pickled onion in here. I always put a little surprise in with my pickled okra. Sometimes it's an onion, sometimes it's a tomato. One tiny one. He's kind of rolled up like a snail. We'll throw him in the batch too. And then we'll dip them into our beer batter, and in the oil they go. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of the okra into the beer batter. So you don't want to overcrowd the pan. When you fry anything, you don't want the pan overcrowded, and you want whatever it is you're frying to be able to move through that oil, and you want it to be completely surrounded by the oil, so that way it fries properly and it fries quickly, and it doesn't soak up so much oil and get kind of soggy. So our okra is frying up nicely. I flipped them. And I turned up the heat just a little bit, because as you put more food in the pan, obviously it cools off your oil. And when you're frying, it's important to stay at a pretty high temperature. I'm just always looking for better ways to do things in the kitchen and to be efficient and try to save time. And this is a method that I prefer. Now there's a lot of batter here, which is great for dipping. They're great as an appetizer. I would recommend using a deep fryer unless you have a deep pan and you want to clean up the mess in the kitchen, which I'm going to do. I love fried okra.